Barack Obama said zero filling. Well, you can't really see this, but basically this is a police officer on a mounted horseback, and that's an Iraqi veteran against the war. Probably a better shot of it. Can you see this? This is a horse, and this is a veteran with his hands behind his back saying, "Non-violent, non-violent," like a mantra. And this bit in the horse's mouth, you know, the metal bit, the police officer was basically using this to smack the guy back and forth. I've never seen anything like it. It's fascinating. So I took a couple of shots of that, kind of shocked, because we were on the sidewalk. You know, they told us if you're on the sidewalk, and there were women and children, just like spectators present, you know. If you're on the sidewalk, you're okay, but if you go in the street, you're going to be arrested. We were really kind of up on the sidewalk. Now, the thing to remember, too, is all the other journalists went inside the beer tent. You know, they're all drinking already. It's 8:45, the debate starts at 9. Well, I, like a good journalist, too, went to a bar, but it was on Hempstead Turnpike. So all of a sudden, all these cop cars come, fire engines. So I ran out of the bar, I grabbed my camera, and I was one of the few people there with a camera. It's not a political story, just I happened to be there, right? So this now is the horse fully up on the sidewalk. This is the front, and this is the rear hoof about to come down on Nick Morgan's face. And you can see it a little bit more clearly there. That's a hoof, that's a face. And this is not good. Seeing a baton in the foreground with a big meaty forearm, usually not a good sign. Sure enough, the next step is he pushed Nadine, this woman, down, and the horse kind of as clear as the guy's head. So I'm taking all these pictures and I'm thinking, you know, what the heck, how did I get into the middle of this? This is Nadine, who was now pushed by that officer in the foreground. And the horse clearly, you know, way up on the sidewalk. As a matter of fact, his neck was over a fence. That's how, you know, far up it went. So here I am with all this footage and I'm trying to decide, what do I do? What would you do? I started interviewing, but it was clear that she was a little out of it, so I told her to go get medical help. This was Nick Morgan, a sergeant, Iraq veteran against the war, and his injuries. And first thing I did was, of course, instead of calling it into Newsday or whatever, I can tell you Newsday started hitting my site. So I called up Huffington Post and I said, you know, I could go into the tent and go there till midnight and then come out and upload this footage. And by 6 a.m. you'll have a story. Or I can go back to the office right now and get it in. Of course, you know, you go get it in, right? So I tweeted it. Hofstra, mounted police charged protesters and spectators. At least 1 injured, 6 arrested. I knew that was a fact. Why? Yeah. Verification, right? Called up the hospitals, called up the Nassau County Police Department, called up everyone you could imagine. Newspapers trying to say, well, who was arrested? What were their names? Was anybody injured? Was anybody killed? What were they charged with? You know, I got no answers to any of them from any of these people. So I posted it on my blog. Pandemonium outside Hofstra debate. At least 3 trampled and injured, 15 arrested. So I could get more facts, you know, as the time went on. And then I posted it to the videos to YouTube, onto my YouTube channel. So Huffington Post, look where they ran it. I mean, before people even exited the debate, this was run on the front page of Huffington Post. And of course, I made sure that for more videos, they linked to Media, where all my videos were. I only gave them the one, right? But it started going viral. The next thing I knew, all hell broke loose. It was front page of Daily Post. This video was on the front page of Current TV. All of a sudden, my blog is being completely overrun with hits. And you know, people gave them all 5 stars. People were giving them, you know, shooting them up into dig, and even the commenters were giving some great comments. Lots of comments on Dakota Pink. Not sure what. Basically, this is my blog. I only got 3 more slides, but this is a monthly look at how many people were hitting my blog and reading. You see pretty much nobody, right? Until boom, this was the night of the debate. And of course, it kept on after that. And because I'm a coward, I could have kept this story going, but I wonder what you would have done in my situation. We'll get to that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go to that right now. But basically, this is that story and all the hits that were coming in. But, you know, I mean, my point is, do you remember what the meme was after this event? Do you remember after that 3rd debate, what you heard over and over and over again for weeks? Do you remember Joe, a guy named Joe? Yeah. Joe the plumber? That was what came out of the tent, right? For 3 weeks after that, and I was shocked again, once again, and not shocked, not surprised, but you know, here we go again. The guy's not even a plumber, his name is not even Joe, and you had this Iraqi veteran go over there, 3,000, you know, 10,000 miles, to fight for freedom of assembly, freedom of the press, You know, freedom of speech, and he comes to New York, 2 presidents right there, and nearly gets trampled to death. You know, defending our rights overseas gets trampled to death here, and yet all we hear about is Joe the plumber. So the last part of this is that I started getting weird comments to my blog. Like when you go to Be the Media where this entry is, I started getting, this is it. You can search the blog and find it, just put in Pen Moment. All the videos are still up there, all the interviews that I did. But the weird thing that started happening is somebody started making these crazy comments to my blog, basically harassing me and kind of trying to get me to back down because they knew that I had the footage. And basically that footage, I should say, resulted in the dropping of the charges against all those 15 people arrested. They weren't guilty of anything. They didn't do anything. And yet some rogue cop overstepped his authority and almost killed a veteran that night, right? So what starts happening? I start getting these weird blog posts. You know, these veterans committed an act of civil disobedience. Look at this one. It said, 10 chose to attempt to enter a credentials-only area. You know, they would have been arrested for DICON if they chose not to obey. Do you know what DICON is? D-I-C-O-N? Anybody? DICON. Who uses lingo like this? DICON is short for disorderly conduct. And I don't know anybody who knows what that means. If you're not a cop or a judge, DICON, what's that, right? So here's this guy completely like harassing me. And what he doesn't know is, because he's so stupid, is that he's leaving a fake email address, but I can see his IP address. And you know, he made 3 entries on 3 separate days, and they were all from NassauCountyPolice.gov. He was harassing me on my blog, on my taxpayer dime, to get me to shut up from the police department computers, right? So I finally outed the guy. I didn't want to out him. I was trying to get him to out himself, you know? And it was very clear. So here's what I would ask you, is what would you have done? You know, like, to me, this was the story. If I was a journalist, instead of a hack, instead of a coward, I would have covered this story and dragged that story out until the person who was responsible didn't gallop off into the sunset with no one. Because, you know, God forbid, this guy may do it again. He may be a rogue cop. Clearly he's harassing me, right? So what would you have done? Would you have stuck with this story? Would you have outed this guy? Yeah. What was that? It was Nassau County Police. Nassau County Police Department.
So if you took him on in the story, you would have had to face all the whole department.
Exactly. And I used to look out my window. I would, Mickey knows, I get home late, you know, 11, 12 o'clock at night, and I would look out my window and see a police car during all this and say to myself, is he here to save my ass or bust my ass? You just don't know, right? Journalists go into cars all over the world, including in the Midwest, and they just happen to blow up. People die. People die covering corruption, especially corruption in your own town. So are you all up for this? Citizen journalism? You guys ready to go on and take on the police? And you know, like I got a newfound respect for journalists and the things that they do when they kiss their kids goodnight, and then they go off to cover a drug trade out in Cali or the mob in Little Italy. You know, thank God for independent reporters, because I wasn't up to the task. You know, I had so much going on in my life. I was too busy, and I didn't want to deal with it. And that's my fear in the future, that we're in this interregnum, right? The interregnum is the decline of traditional journalism and the funding mechanisms that support it. And before we reach that promise of citizen journalism, we're in kind of dangerous times. So support your local journalists, support your independent media, do what you can. With Project Censored, buy the book, check out Be the Media. I'm not trying to push you to buy a book, but pay attention, you know? And also, start writing the story. The beautiful thing about this Renaissance is everyone in this room has the ability to affect the grand narrative. We no longer have to accept Joe the plumber, right? I started to rewrite the story. You know, Newsday came to my blog in the middle of the night, and Newsday's coverage on Newsday.com, it said this: a spectator's face came in contact with a horse's hoof. That was the coverage from this story. A spectator's face came in contact with a horse's hoof. That's not what happened, friends. That Newsday reporter